All right, guys, back on Southeastern 14. Max Barr joins me once again. SEC basketball reaction for the November 7th games, Tuesday night's games in the SEC. You know, Max, I told someone on Tuesday afternoon, said, great night for the SEC to kick things off on Monday, right? I said, yeah, it's a great night. You know, usually you have teams lose games. You know, you have one of those somewhere that is just like, oh, man, why? How did that happen? Makes you scratch your head a little bit. I was like, luckily, the SEC had none of those. Well, Tuesday was a different story.
Well,
We'll start. There's only two games on Tuesday, but we'll start with the one that probably most meets that criteria, and that is Presbyterian 68, Vanderbilt 62. Now, you got to tell the full story here because it
yes.
is important. Tyron Lawrence did not play. We did not expect that. I can tell you, I didn't hear a thing about Tyron Lawrence not playing. So he didn't play in the game. Lee Dort didn't play in the game, and Benon Lubin didn't play in the game. And so those are three, rotation guys for sure. And then you've got your one guy who's an all SEC guy at the top. So that's the first part of the story. Okay. However, on the flip side, Presbyterian won 5 games last year, 2 against non-Division 1 competition. 2 came against VMI, who was 8-25. Elon, 7-25. Elon was 8-24. And so, statistically, and you saw this on Twitter because it's Twitter, and this is what people do. They really dive into the numbers. Statistically, you could probably make the argument it's the worst loss in the history of the program. Home loss, probably. I said the one that probably came the closest for me. You'd have to go back to 2013. They lost to Marist, 50-33, which only scoring 33 points. I mean, I can remember that game vividly. But that was a neutral court game. Marist finished 238 in Ken Palm that year. They only won 10 games. So there's a huge difference in Presbyterian last year to this year. Now this is not to take anything away from Presbyterian, but we are an SEC show, right? And so we specifically look at the SEC side. I don't care if you're missing 3 of your top guys. This is a brutal loss. And honestly, Max, it's for all the reasons why one of the reasons why Vanderbilt missed the tournament last year. What was the one thing everybody said? It was, oh man, the non-conference. You have to, you can't lose the kind of games in non-conference that they lost. You start the season off with this loss, and I mean, unless you have just a superb record, this is the one that's going to wind up at the end of the season looking back and saying, that may keep us out of the NCAA tournament. Long way from now, but it's fair to look at that based on how last season ended.
No, I mean, you're right. Three main guys out, but you got to win that game, man. You got to win that game.
Yeah.
I remember game started, and I didn't know. I said right before we ended our show yesterday, I said I like Vanderbilt to cover. I thought Tyron Lawrence was going to be a problem against a weaker opponent. I had no clue he wasn't going to play. And then Ezra Mannion with foul trouble doesn't play the whole first half, basically.
Yep.
Jason Rivera Torres, his length looked good defensively a little bit, but he looked a little bit clunky, a little bit out of sorts offensively. He had four turnovers, I think it was, in 20 minutes. So, I mean, I was expecting a little bit more out of him. Colin Smith, 0 for 5 from 3. Ugh. I mean, it wasn't pretty. I mean, this is the one that comes back to bite you. You said it. I mean, and this team didn't load up the non-con. They don't have a ton of opportunities to just rack up these extra quality wins. I mean, this is disaster. I mean, what happens if Tyron Lawrence comes back and they look pretty good? He was the missing piece, and it's like, okay, well, just throw that opening game out. They didn't have all these guys. Look at how they're playing. Well, on paper, it's not going to tell that story.
No.
So bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, to kind of put everything into context here, Presbyterian was picked last in the preseason poll in the Big South.
Not good.
They led by 15 with 5 minutes to go in this game. Winds up being a 6-point game. They're up 15 on the road at Vanderbilt. I mean, think about that. Like, just let that sit in for like that is, yeah. I mean, 59-44 with 4 minutes and 43 seconds left in the second half.
I
And
remember looking at
so,
the box score, and I'm like, okay, there's no Lawrence. Magnon's been out. No Lubin. Colin Smith's having a bad game. I'm like, okay, Lehigh transfer Evan Taylor's got to be having a big game. He had 0 points until like 5 minutes left. He had a few garbage time buckets. So I don't know. Not a good feeling from first game, obviously.
yeah, and look, I said sometimes people think you can overplay depth. I don't in this league because, and this it shouldn't matter in a game like this, but like this is why the depth is so important in terms of like being one. And we're going to talk about a team that played 10 guys in a second, but
Yep.
it's like you know that is why it's such an important part because you may have these situations like this, right? And again, this is sort of the perfect storm, right? You get three main players out, start the season. You've got a new roster, right? So you're putting in this era where your opening games are more of usually experimenting a bit, seeing what you have.
Right.
It was just everything that could sort of go wrong went wrong here. To have your top player out, like I said, Magnon basically sits out the almost entire first half,
Yep.
foul trouble, and it immediately puts it puts Presbyterian in a position to where all right, we can probably we can do this. Like we now believe that we can actually come in and do this. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't look. Let's say this too. If you're just watching, if you're a Vanderbilt fan, you're just watching the first time. Max and I picked Vanderbilt as our sleeper team in the SEC this year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, let's just call it what it is. We were not coming into this like completely down on this team. We were probably higher on this team than many people were. So if you want to, look at this as criticism, you're right because like it is based on we thought this was a team that was going to reach pretty, higher expectations than people expected this year. And so it's one game. If everybody comes back, I think things will be okay. So I know it's easy to look at the skies falling. It's easy to put this in context, say, hey, this may be the worst loss in program history. But they get everybody back. We know it's a different team. But still, as you said, come the end of the season, if you're right there on the line trying to make the NCAA tournament, no matter who played and who did not play, this is the kind of loss that is going to come back. And when you're comparing resumes and all this other stuff, this is the one that will keep you out of the tournament. Period. Like there's no debate. And
I
so,
texted Blake last night. I said, "Well, hey, if we're looking on the bright side, Vanderbilt's only going to improve from
yeah.
here on out."
Well, I don't know. It's I know there's a very frustrated fan base because too it's the momentum they built at the end of last season.
Yeah.
And as I put out on Twitter, 4 hours before the game started. I'm like, they got one of the best backcourts in the SEC. Look at the numbers here, Magnon and Lawrence to finish the season. Their final 10 games, remarkable numbers. And like the encore begins tonight. Well, not what we thought because of course Lawrence didn't play, and everything just We'll see. Vanderbilt's got USC Upstate up next. They got UNC Greensboro after that in a game that I'm circling as, I mean, that's a tricky game because
Good
that's not a
program.
bad team. So again, it's one of those now you start to look ahead and like you said, they're non-conference. Yeah, I mean, they got NC State, Memphis in
I'm
there.
circling that NC State game.
Yeah, Texas Tech. So yeah, we'll see, but obviously not the start Vanderbilt fans wanted by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully hopefully all those guys get back soon because clearly the Commodores need it. Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's go to the main event, which was Auburn and Baylor.
Whew.
Looked like the SEC was going to get a nice win here, but didn't turn out that way. Baylor rallies. Auburn was up 9 at the half. Baylor makes a big run towards the end there. I think I was looking at Ken Palm here. I'm going to pull it back up. I think Auburn had a 85.1% chance to win with about 4.5 minutes left. And as you saw, Max, I mean, Baylor just kind of took control from there. And yeah, it feels like a missed opportunity. But as I told you before we started recording, I still feel pretty optimistic about Auburn because I think you could see a lot of things in this game, specifically, and we know where I'm going here, the 3-point shooting. 9 of 19. I think you saw Denver Jones hit some big shots. Aiden Holloway hit some big shots. That's what we said when we previewed this team. We said they're going to be better shooting the ball because of those two guys specifically. Off to a good start here. I know it's a disappointing loss, but I'll be honest, I still came out of this pretty optimistic about Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, sour taste in my mouth right after the game ended, just because of how well Auburn played, and how kind of everything we previewed is kind of how they looked. We kind of nailed this team. Um, but I mean, you got to be able to defend without fouling.
Yeah.
34 free throws for Baylor is kind of the killer, and you have Jacoby Walter have a great game, and that's kind of all it took down the stretch. Um, Baker Mazzara looked great, but he's got to be able to play longer than 12 minutes. I mean, 4 fouls in 12 minutes. And it wasn't even like the refs were completely screwing Auburn. It was like just cheap hand check fouls 25, 30 feet from the basket, and trying to fight through a screen too aggressively. There's another foul. It was like just cheap, frustrating fouls, I felt like, for the most part. But you come away and you're like, okay, this Auburn team has they at the very least were like, okay, we said that they were top 25. I think this is a top 25 team. Like, they're right there. They're right there hanging with the best. They have length, depth with Chaney Johnson and Chris Moore and Jalen Williams, and Dylan Cardwell looked good off the bench. Janai Broom double, and I think that was kind of a poor game from him. The one thing that I'm really kind of like caught up about is Trey Donaldson. 4 turnovers, only 1 assist in 13 minutes, and he got the start. So I know they didn't want to just throw Aiden Holloway right in there after he was kind of coming off a little bit of an injury there, but a little bit of the ball handling and who's going to be running this offense when Aiden Holloway's not out there is a little bit concerning. But all in all, if you're taking something away from this game, if you're taking one thing, it should be, okay, this team can hang with the good ones.
Yeah. I mean, look, Bruce Pearl did say he missed opportunity. That's the phrase I use.
Yeah,
That's
missed
exactly
opportunity.
what this feels like. Like, it just feels like one where you played as well as you did in the first half. You weren't as good really on either side in the second half. And, that's the difference when you're playing a team like Baylor. And that's, like we said, it was going to be a tough matchup no matter what. But when you play a Baylor, you got to put together just a complete game. And
Yep.
it was not a complete game. There was a good first half, good spurts at times in the second half, but really just that final stretch run where games are won and lost. Baylor was the better team, and that's what it comes down to when you're playing, like you said, 2 top 25 type teams. That's what decides it. And so, yeah, I mean, I said it a minute ago, kind of talking about depth and Vanderbilt and all that, but like Bruce plays 10 guys here, at least 12 minutes, and I think we said it coming in. It was the most intriguing part about Auburn was going to be rotation minutes wise and all that. And then seeing just how many, and look, it's game one. That's going to continue to change as we go along. But yeah, I thought it was interesting just to kind of see, lineup wise what they did. I mean, I think we both are in agreement. Aiden Holloway's going to, he led him in minutes last night. He didn't start, but like, let's call it what it is. This guy's going to be on the floor a
Yep.
ton this season. He's going to be someone that's out there, and you can see why. I mean, it's a lot of the things we talked about coming into the season, the comparisons to other Auburn point guards of the past. And yeah, like he looks like, the next great one, like in terms of his skill set and all that. So I was, for a game one playing a Baylor, like we said, it's a tough thing to do when you're a freshman coming in, having to play a team like this that is very physical and all that. Big team too, Baylor, just big. Like and Auburn is too, right? But I think, yeah, I was pretty impressed with Aiden Holloway. 19 points, 27 minutes, 6 assists. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember when Baker Mazzara picked up like 2 cheap fouls in a row, I was like, "Oh, like that is so significant, like
Yeah.
so significant." And they were both like off the ball, like it was like a side out of bounds. But man, I mean, to be able to have 4 guys with 4 fouls and still have like a serviceable 5 out there on the court, that's a luxury not many teams have. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think just good feeling going forward, definitely.
Yeah. Auburn had 6 guys with at least 4 fouls. Yeah. I mean, and
Oof.
some of that's down the stretch or fouling to try
Right.
to, but still, like that's a pretty glaring number when you look at it from that standpoint. But yeah, I think Auburn will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough game, like we said, to start the season, and I think you'll get more out of Jalen Williams. I said on 4 points there, not his best, but again, I think it's going to be interesting to see the dynamic of the shot, distribution and how many, because I mean he was kind of relied on a lot more last year, but we'll see, offensively how these numbers continue to sort of change with Holloway really, I think, stepping up and being, and Jones too, like we mentioned. So we'll see what happens there with Auburn up next for them. They get Southeastern Louisiana on Friday, and then an interesting game next week against they got Notre Dame. Looking at the rest of their schedule, they still got games against Virginia Tech, Indiana, USC, and some of that's part of tournaments too, I suppose. I'd have to look at the rest of their schedule, but yeah. So there you go. Auburn off to an 0-1 start here. What felt like a missed opportunity against Baylor. All right, we wrap up here with some thoughts on the one game on the SEC slate on Wednesday night. That is going to be Mississippi State and Arizona State. That is in 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Tip off for this one, Max. We know the story of Mississippi State. We've talked about it. And by the way, this game going to be played in Chicago. And like we said, no Toulouse Smith. I think that's the most interesting part. It looks like everybody else is good to go from what I've seen in this game, although I may have missed one somewhere.
There's
But
a few out.
is
I
there a
think
few
it's
out? Okay.
yeah, Tolu Smith out, Kashawn Murphy out, and
That's right.
Shaquille
Murphy's
Moore.
out. That's right. I for some reason I thought we'd mentioned Murphy, but we probably did not. Yeah. So
Moore is out also. Guard.
okay, so Moore's out as well. Ah,
Yes.
that's right, because he suspension, I think, for
Yep.
Moore, right? Yep. So okay. Well, take everything I just said about Mississippi State and take out three of your top, producers, and then try to find a path to victory, I guess, here for the Bulldogs. So, Arizona State probably middle of the pack to lower in the Pac-12 is probably my guess. Kind of that's the
Yep.
range you'll probably find them in heading into the season. Roster looks a little bit different this season, and so yeah, this is an interesting game for Mississippi State. Like we said, I think I just don't know what to expect, man. I mean, you're missing Toulouse Smith, and you got other guys out, as we just said. So I don't know if you're betting this one, Max, but I don't have a great feel on this one. So
No, so I'm not going to be betting a side on this game because Arizona State has a few guys out also. LSU transfer Adam Miller hasn't gotten his waiver yet.
yeah,
Returner Alonzo Gaffney is going to be out. So you return guys like Frankie Collins. They got a few transfers. None really good. I think the guys departing from Arizona State are much better than the guys that they brought in. So I think this is a down year for Arizona State also. Frankie Collins is a good guard though. Um, but I mean, with Tolu, with Murphy and Moore out, I'm just looking for the new guys to see who steps up. Is it Josh Hubbard? Is it Adrian Myers? Um, who from the I'm expecting a big game from Andrew Taylor. I think everyone should already expect that. Just with how many guys they have out. Jimmy Bell Jr. should step in nicely. But actually, one bet that I did like, I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but it was Cam Matthews over 6.5 rebounds. I actually liked because Rothstein reported that Jans is experimenting with Cam Matthews at the small ball 5 a little bit when Jimmy Bell is out. Um, so I do like a little look at Cam Matthews rebounds, but other than that, I'm just sitting back and trying to see how the new pieces for Mississippi State look. I think we're obviously gonna get a good look at them because of how many guys are out. But I just want to get a good look, see how the offense is, see if the spacing's changed, stuff like that.
yeah. Toulouse Smith averaged 15.7 points per game last year. Shaquille Moore averaged 9.8. So basically, your two double-digit scores. You're without them, and um, already a team that was not the most consistent at times offensively. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens here. I don't even know what to pick in this game. I'm going to pick Mississippi State to win the game because I think that it's a hard one though, because again, you've got important pieces missing on both sides, but I still think overall the Mississippi State roster is better. Just kind of in researching both, I think they will be okay. And Jans, I've always said I think Jans is just a terrific coach. And I think game planning wise, he's really good at kind of knowing what he has and getting the most out of that. And so we saw that last year, I think, many times. So give me Mississippi State in this one. But all right, Max, hopefully more SEC wins to talk about moving forward, and not the Tuesday night loss. We got a big slate coming up on Friday, and we will talk a lot about that. We will preview some of those games individually. Those probably come out Thursday afternoon, something like that. Again, some big games coming up: Tennessee, Wisconsin, Missouri, Memphis. Ohio State, Texas A&M. You got Georgia, Wake Forest, Florida, Virginia. A lot of good stuff in those games on Friday. So we'll have it all covered here. Southeastern 14. Be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. And a lot more on the way here. SEC basketball coverage. Check out all of our SEC football stuff to get you ready for week 11. And again, we appreciate you guys watching or listening as always. And we will talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.